Now, from approximately coast to coast, it's the Bob and Ray Radio Show.
Well, hi, everybody, and thank you, Paul. That was a great start for today's show, and I think we've got an exciting one looking down the program here.
The agenda looks like a program that I wouldn't want to miss, so I'm going to stay for the whole half hour.
Okay. First of all, we take great pride in, again, bringing you our slightly acclaimed Bob and Ray Public Service feature, Speaking Out. Now, that's the portion of our program where we invite you listeners to call in with your opinion on some controversial issue of the day.
Just pick up the phone and give us a ring because we're making our nationwide radio facilities available to you right now. You know, I'm sure that gesture puts us a head and shoulder above Albert Schweitzer and those other so-called humanitarians who thought they were hot stuff.
Well, excuse me, Ray, I never heard anything about Albert Schweitzer to indicate he thought he was hot stuff.
Well, of course, he did his thinking in German, so he probably used a different term. But that's beside the point. What I'm really saying is that it's very noble of us to give up part of our show just so the peasants can have a chance to spout off.
Yes, so thank us. The light on our phone is starting to flash, and I guess that means we have today's first peasant on the line. Hello, would you give us your name, please?
Yes. My name is Delicious Instant Oatmeal with all the yummy flavor of the real thing, Ackerman.
Well, I've never heard of anybody with a name like that.
Well, my mother was an American Indian, and they name their kids after the first thing the baby sees when it's born.
I've heard that.
Now, in my case, there was a box of instant oatmeal that the makers claimed had all the yummy flavor of the real thing, even though it didn't.
Well, is that what you called to discuss, instant oatmeal?
No, I calmed down about that years ago. Now I want to express the opinion that good books cost too much. And there really should be some place where you can borrow them to read, without having to buy them.
Well, sir, I think that idea has already
Wait, hear me out. This is not as silly as you think. You see, most of us don't have any use for a $20 book once we've finished it. Mm-hmm. And if we just had a public building someplace where they could store books, then a lot of people could take turns reading the same ones.
Sir, didn't you ever hear of a library?
Well, I'll say. There's a great big one right down the street from where I grew up. My folks always warned that if I was bad, they'd take me down there and let the librarians throw me in one of the dungeons.
Oh, I see. So you've never actually been in a library, then?
No, knock on wood. I was never bad enough to get taken there. But why are you bringing that up now?
Well, I don't know. It seemed pertinent, but maybe not. So let's move along to another caller here. Let's try this line. Your name, please?
Hello, I'm Mrs. Abraham Lincoln of Springfield, Illinois, and I think people around here should make an effort not to get so mixed up just because my husband has the same name as the President of the United States.
The former president, you mean?
I thought he was still in office.
No, he isn't.
Well, maybe that'll make it easier. At least my husband can stop calling himself Dishonest Abe just so people will know he's not the other one.
Well, it's often hard to shed a nickname, but he can try while we move along to a final caller here. Your name, please.
Hello, I'm Odie Loxfelder, and I live upstairs over that place where nobody lives downstairs anymore.
All right. What's the opinion you'd like to express over the air, sir?
Well, I have 26 ideas jotted down here.
Well,
the first...
Excuse me, sir. We don't have time for you to give us 26 opinions. Why don't you just pick one of them?
Well, I can't do that. They're all connected. For instance, I think the members of the British royal family ought to go out on the road as a traveling softball team. But they can't very well do that unless the monarchy is abolished, which is another one of my suggestions.
You say all 26 of your ideas are dependent on each other like that?
Well, pretty much so, except for number 22. Of course, that's the one about stuffing pillows with penguin feathers to boost the economy of the Antarctica. I guess that could be done even if the British royal family doesn't play softball.
Yeah, I agree. Hardly anything in the Antarctic has much bearing on the British royal family, but thanks for giving us your thoughtful views, and I think we've accomplished something here, don't you, Ray? Hope our listeners will be inspired to do the same on our next edition of Speaking Out. And hello, sports fans. Again, it's time for Biff Burns' Sports Room. Today, we're fortunate in having with us Charlie Brackley, the man who invented the huddle when he played football for Yardley University many years ago. Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Biff, and hello to all the fans who remember me as the Galloping Cat.
Charlie, or Galloping Cat, whichever you prefer.
Well, Charlie's all right, Biff, although to this day, people still walk up to me on the street and say, "Hello, Galloping Cat."
Uh-huh. Now, Charlie, I'll bet very few listeners know that your number 46 was retired after you hung up the cleats.
No, people still stop me on the street to tell me that old 46 isn't being used anymore at Yardley University.
And would you tell our listeners just where that number was retired to, Charlie?
It's enshrined in a glass case in Pendle Hall at the university, right next to the deflated football that Bip Connolly kicked for a 64-yard field goal.
I know. I visited Yardley University last year in time for the Bip Connolly once-a-year inflation of the ball ceremonies. It was very moving.
Well, Yardley University is rife with tradition. Did you know that before each football game, the students stuff dollar bills into Martin Egglesby's pocket? They do it for luck.
Is Martin Egglesby a statue on the campus?
No, he's the registrar at Yardley University, and he's very alive and in evidence.
I see. Now, Charlie, how did you invent the huddle?
Well, we were playing Washington, D.C. University.
All the Washington red tapes.
Yeah, that's right. And in those days, after a play, there was no huddle. The center passed the ball to whoever he felt like.
And, of course, that's nothing like the scientific method used today.
Right, Biff. No one on the team knew who was going to get the ball, and once you did get it, you could do anything you wanted. You could run, you could kick, pass. I favored running myself.
And, of course, that's why you became known as the Galloping Cat. But was the huddle invented during that game, Charlie?
Yes, it was just after a play where I'd been thrown for a substantial loss. The linesman thought I was going to toss a pass, so they all ran downfield.
That kind of left you unprotected.
Oh, sure did, Biff. The Red Tape 11 bore down on me, and I thought it best just to fall to the turf before they reached me.
I understand, Charlie.
Well, Biff, I neglected to mention that falling to the turf meant nothing whatsoever to the Red Tapes. They all piled on anyway.
And with all that sheer weight resting on you, I suppose there was some discomfort.
A little, Biff. After they got off, some of the members of my team became curious, and they gathered around me.
Now, that sounds like a huddle. Was it then that you gave the team instructions on the next play?
Yes, Biff. While I was lying there, I complained bitterly. I said, "Look, fellas, Charlie Brackley's mother didn't raise him to be a fool. Give the ball to somebody else on the next play."
And who did the center snap the ball to on the next play?
Bender Monahan. Now, he went in one direction, and his interference in another. He didn't stand a chance.
I know. I saw Bender Monahan's broken helmet enshrined in glass in Pendle Hall.
Right. But on that play, Biff, Bender Monahan had been advised as to the disposition of the ball. So, don't you see? That was the first huddle.
Right, Charlie. And it wasn't until many years later, 1922 to be exact, when the Wyoming Cliff Dwellers decided it might be a good idea for all football personnel to go in the same direction on a play, that the huddle became popular. The circle quickly followed. Thank you, Charlie Brackley, for being with us today. Without you, things would never have been talked over properly in a football game. You're a gridiron great. And this is Biff Burns saying until next time, this is Biff Burns saying so long.
Now it's a big moment on the old Bob and Ray Show for all you culture fans. We're launching our newest highbrow feature today. It's called Prose and Poetry on Parade. Now, during the weeks ahead, we'll be visiting with the authors of some current best-selling books. And to kick off the series, we have the very talented Rob Stonehenge here today. Rob, I'm sure you have the year's big hit here in your newest expose, All the President's Laundry.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Ray. A lot of months of digging through the evidence went into this, and it's gratifying that so many readers seem as interested in the subject as I was.
Well, it's certainly a subject that needed to be investigated. When did you first become interested in how our past presidents did their laundry?
It's a funny thing about that. I'd known ever since I was a school kid that John Adams was our first president to live in Washington, and I'd read the old story that his wife Abigail hung the family laundry on a clothesline beside the White House. But I never thought anything more about it at the time.
Well, many of us who've heard that old story never think anything more of it at the time or even later, come to think of it. Something caused you to probe deeper, Rob. What was it?
Well, Ray, as you know, I'm a reporter covering the White House for the Omaha Press, Beacon Dispatch, and Morning Ledger. And one day, as I was going in for a briefing, it occurred to me that I'd never seen any laundry drying in the side yard of the mansion.
But then I suppose it struck you right away that the president's clothes are probably now dried in, well, an electric dryer.
No, even before I thought of that, it struck me that the White House probably sends its dirty clothes out to a professional laundry. However, I staked out the building for several weeks, and no laundry trucks ever went in or out.
Well, the chapters in your book about that laundry truck stakeout are fascinating to read, I'm sure.
Does that mean you haven't read them yourself?
No, but I'm planning to quite soon. So, what did you do once you learned that the first family doesn't send its clothing to the laundry?
I began chatting with the old-time correspondents at the White House. For instance, I talked at some length with Bingham Hutchison. He's covered every president since Herbert Hoover for the Weekly Editorial Companion.
I didn't know that magazine was still being published.
It isn't. It went broke years ago. But Bingham Hutchison still hangs around the White House press room. He's the dean of correspondence there, and I figured if anybody knew how the president gets his laundry done, Bingham would be the man.
And was he any help?
Well, he provided a lot of good background material, and I was able to use in the book. You reminded me that Hoover wore celluloid collars, which never would have required laundering at all.
Well, that was another small piece that fit into the overall puzzle, huh?
Yes, but it was only a partial explanation. And the mystery deepened when Bingham Hutchison and I started discussing President James Buchanan. Of course, we hadn't been around in those days, but we knew that Buchanan was our long bachelor president. So that made it even more puzzling as to how he got his laundry done.
Couldn't he have had a woman come in one day a week or something like that?
Well, that had to be regarded as a possibility, so Bingham went over to the National Archives and hunted for any mention of a laundress who came to the White House regularly between 1856 and 1860.
And I suppose Bingham Hutchison had plenty of time to help you with that, since the magazine he works for isn't published anymore.
That's right. However, he couldn't find anything at all about a person coming in to do the White House laundry during Buchanan's administration. Later, Bingham and I went through a lot more documents for every administration from Madison through Eisenhower, and we never found a cleaning ticket, a laundry tag, nothing.
Well, that's amazing. When one considers the many different types of clothing made out of different fabrics that were worn during that very long period.
Yes, I have a chapter in the book on that entitled Laundering Instructions Through the Years.
I see. So tell me, what finally led you to the real inside story of how our presidents have gotten their laundry done?
Well, I'm afraid your listeners will have to read the book to find that out. I don't want to give away the ending.
Fair enough. So thanks for joining us today. We've been chatting with Rob Stonehenge, author of the sensational expose, All the President's Laundry. And we invite those of you at home to join us for another illuminating discussion on our next edition of Prose and Poetry on Parade.
Now come with us again as we journey to Garish Summit and its endless tales of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. As our action resumes, wealthy Dowager Agatha Murchfield is in the downstairs conversation pit when her attorney and longtime friend, Bowden Pardue, enters. She rises to greet him and speaks.
Don't come a step closer, or I'll blow your head off. This Roscoe's loaded, and I know how to use it.
Agatha, for goodness sake, put that gun away.
Oh, I'm sorry, Bowden. I didn't recognize you in that Argyle sweater with the plaid knickers. I naturally assumed that anyone dressed that way would be a member of the criminal element.
No, it's just that your urgent message reached me at our cottage down by the lake. I dress strictly for comfort there.
Well, I'm glad you didn't take time to change because I have a major legal problem with far-reaching financial consequences.
It's only a small cottage, and the lake isn't really fashionable anymore, but I feel I can relax there.
The police have been searching for my wayward son Caldwell ever since I discovered he was embezzling from the family business. Now I find that he's still writing checks on our joint personal account.
Every year Myrtle suggests that we sell the cottage and buy a place in the mountains, but I wouldn't be comfortable there.
My word, Bowden, you haven't heard a thing I've said.
Of course I have, Agatha. I was merely exchanging pleasantries. Now, was there anything in particular you wanted to see me about?
Certainly. Caldwell is hiding somewhere in Bolivia, and he's writing large checks every day on our joint account, so I want you to go down to the bank immediately and stop payment.
You want me to go to the Garish Summit Mercantile and Millionaires Bank wearing an Argyle sweater with plaid knickers?
I don't care what you wear. Just stop those checks. I can't imagine why we're dawdling around this way.
I'm just trying to envision why anyone would need such a large amount of money to live well in Bolivia.
Well, there it is, Slick. A 45-room villa with a view of the Andes. And I picked it up for only $2 million.
Well, it may be a bargain, Caldwell, but I thought we were just laying low here in Bolivia until the cops get off your trail. Why do we need a mansion for a hangout?
There's been a change in plans, Slick. I'm sending you on alone. I'll be staying here for a rendezvous with my brother's ravishingly beautiful secretary, Pamela.
I thought Pamela and your brother Rodney were going to be married.
That's what Rodney thought, too, but I've spoken with Pamela, and once she heard about this 45-room villa, she decided to come here and marry me instead. I can just imagine what Rodney will say when he finds out he's lost another round to his big brother.
I scarcely know what to say, Pamela. Having you change your vacation to next week is quite inconvenient. That's when we have to take an inventory of all the lead ingots in the warehouse.
Well, that's tough toenails, Rodney. Caldwell phoned me last night from Bolivia. We were chatting about all the millions he embezzled from the company here, and when he asked me to come down and marry him, I impulsively said yes.
Well, that relieves me of one chore I had on my calendar for next week, reserving the church for our own wedding.
I'm glad you're taking it so well, Rodney.
Actually, I'm not taking it well at all, Pamela. Inside, I'm a seething cauldron of emotions.
Well, it's nice to know you care that much.
I care a great deal. Caldwell has filched money from this company. Now he thinks he can steal my fiancée, too. But I'll track him to the ends of the earth. And if you're with him when I find him, you'll be arrested as his accomplice in crime. You may rest assured of that.
Ken Caldwell will continue to maintain a low profile while he stages a formal wedding at the largest villa in Bolivia. And Bowden Pardew continue to enjoy respect after he appears at the bank in an Argyle sweater with plaid knickers. And what about the sudden surprise inventory at the lead warehouse? Join us next time when we'll hear Rodney say,
567, 568, 569. Just as I suspected, we're 75,000 ingots short.
That's in our next exciting visit to Garish Summit. Now, through the magic of live radio, we again join Farley Gerard in a remote corner of America as he continues his travels down the byways. Today, Farley has parked his luxurious motorhome in Elkhorn, Kentucky, where he's set to bring us another of his homespun reports. So come in, please, Farley Gerard.
Older Americans can well remember when this country's belief in freedom of the press was symbolized by the small-town print shop. There, the pungent smell of fresh printing ink was always in the air, and the old cast-iron press ground out the weekly newspaper for all to read. Now the word processor and the electric copying machine have generally taken away the printer's craft, but here in Elkhorn, Kentucky, there's still one man who loves to see hand-set type making its imprint on clean white paper. His name is Medrick Slade. He's proud to call himself an old-fashioned journeyman printer.
Actually, I'm a master printer, not a journeyman, but I'd be proud to call myself either one.
Well, Mr. Slade, standing here in your musty little shop, I feel as though I've taken a step backward through time.
A lot of tourists who come here say that. Of course, they don't say it as poetically as you do, but I think they feel it.
Well, your shop is truly like a lost scene out of my boyhood, with the big wooden type cases along one wall, and what are those cartons on the other side over there?
Those are filled with hand-etched steel engravings of the kind that were used on fancy official documents years ago.
We mean like old land deeds and things like that?
Yes. Also, I have some engravings of locomotives and factory buildings that were used to print stock certificates for companies that no longer exist. And there are also some very fine etchings of U.S. presidents that were used on our early currency.
Well, you're preserving some valuable mementos of our American heritage here, and you were telling me before we went on the air that you still crank up that old flywheel press to run off replicas of beautiful old documents.
That's right. Collectors love fine quality hand-printed work that's seldom seen anymore, so I use my original equipment to print replicas of old documents for them. For example, now here's an exact copy of one of the bonds that was issued in 1810 to finance the Wabash and Erie Canal.
That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Then over here I have a reproduction of a stock certificate for a wagon company, printed in 1844. Look, here's a replica of an old $1 bill like they used in 1963.
I thought it was illegal to print copies of currency that look just like the money still in use today.
Oh, this doesn't look much like a modern bill at all. You see the signature of the Secretary of the Treasury down there in the corner? That guy hasn't been in office for 20 years.
And how else does this replica of yours differ from the real money that's being issued by the Treasury today?
Well, that's the main difference, just the signature.
I see.
But collectors I deal with are trained to notice that difference right away. In fact, I sold my whole stock of this particular design to a well-known collector just before you came in.
You sold your whole stock to one person? How many copies?
200,000. I guess he wanted some extra to take home to his friends and fellow collectors. He was from Las Vegas.
Are you saying you sold $200,000 worth of counterfeit money to one customer and you still don't see anything illegal about that?
Well, I'd prefer that you didn't use the word counterfeit to describe my work. There are a number of artisans like me who print replicas of old documents. And listen, we're a highly respected group.
Well, I admire your talent as much as the next person. I'm just surprised the Secret Service hasn't been around to...
Oh, the feds don't get down this way very often.
Well, after this interview, I imagine they soon will. But in the meantime, I congratulate you on the lovely work you do here.
Thank you. I also make replicas of old Treasury bonds that several collectors have been able to redeem at a Chicago bank for $1,000 apiece. I think that speaks well for my craftsmanship.
Indeed it does. And the look of pride on your face is truly one of a master printer who takes satisfaction in a job well done. It's a look that isn't often seen today on the faces of workers in our big cities. Here in Elkhorn, Kentucky, the pace is more leisurely, and the quality of the work shows the love that went into it. The love of a man named Medrick Slade. We'll remember him as we move along to listen to other stories waiting to be told down the byways. Until our next stop, this is Farley Gerard saying so long for now.
And now, the United States Mint, one of the nation's leading producers of fine new money, presents another dramatic story from the files of the Emergency Ward.
Greetings and welcome. I'm Dr. Gerhard Snutton, handsome young physician who's not yet established a practice of his own. Instead, I work in the emergency ward of a big city hospital. The emergency ward is a place where the drama of human suffering is an everyday occurrence. Take the other evening, for example. I was on a short break, checking my latest medical experiment, when my assistant nurse Rudhouse turned to me and said,
Why are you just sitting there staring at that colony of ants, Doctor?
I believe I'm on the brink of a great medical discovery, Nurse Rudhouse. Notice how these ants can carry burdens that are larger than their own bodies? Imagine what a human being could do if I merely restructured his vertebrae like that of an ant.
Well, I think you'd also have to give him 8 legs if he's going to get enough leverage to drag 500-pound breadcrumbs.
I consider that, but I'm afraid it's not practical. Rebuilding a person's backbone to make it more like that of an ant would involve less surgery.
Oh, pardon me. Is this the emergency ward of Rick City Hospital?
Yes, and I'm Dr. Gerhard Snutton, handsome young physician who's not yet established a practice of his own. Please stop mumbling and state your business.
That's the best I can talk, Doc. I got a Parker House roll stuck in my cheek.
I see. I see the swelling now. That's most unfortunate. Mumps can be a serious illness for a man your age.
Doctor, I don't believe he mentioned anything about mumps. I think he said he has a Parker House roll stuck in his cheek.
Nurse Roothouse, I've asked you not to interfere when I'm in consultation with a patient.
He's right, Doc. It's a Parker House roll. Somebody hit my elbow while I was eating, and I got jammed in my cheek.
Well, try not to get too panicky. Some adults with mumps have been known to pull through.
Doctor, he's not saying a word about mumps. He's telling you that a lump in his cheek there is a Parker House roll.
Nurse Roothouse, I'm a medical school graduate, and I certainly couldn't have won my diploma without being able to understand simple English. He has the classic symptoms of mumps, and he's merely trying to tell me about them.
Excuse me, if you're going to fight with her for a while, I'll just take a walk down the hall.
Yes, I'm sure the pain is excruciating, but don't worry, old fellow. I'll do my best to save you.
Don't slap him on the back, Doctor. That could be dangerous.
Oh, for once, I think you were right, Nurse Roothouse. His dentures flew clear across the room when I hit him.
Those weren't dentures, Doc. It was the Parker House roll stuck on my cheek. I guess slapping me on the back jarred it loose and made it fly out.
Well, that's not surprising. I slap newborn babies on the back for much the same reason, except that they haven't been eating Parker House rolls.
Well, I've never studied up on those medical technicalities, but it sure worked in my case. What do I owe you, Doc?
Well, for doing the same thing in a maternity case, I get $150, but you took up less of my time, so let's say $3.
Gee, that's a real bargain. Here you are, and thanks. Goodbye.
Well, Nurse Roothouse, medical science has again worked its wonders to save a human life when all hope was gone. So you may simply enter the notation in your case book, patient released, cured.
And so another tragedy is miraculously averted, thanks to the dedicated men and women who toil in a big city hospital. Join us again soon when the United States Mint, producer of fine new money, will bring you still more tense drama from the files of the Emergency Ward.
And as we say in the movie business, that's a wrap for this Bob and Ray show.
It was developed and produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who still maintains he gave his best film performance in Citizen Kane.
His associate producer, Lars Hoel, still insists he's never seen any of the movies he's made.
Paul Taubman provided our music.
Sound by Al Schaefer, who also played the part of the old gaffer.
Technical director was David Glasser. Engineering assistants were Marty Newman, Miles Smith, and Jay Newland. Production assistants Bill O'Neill and Charles Whitson.
And the entire program was recorded at Howard Schwartz Studios in New York. Howard was also the best boy.
Funding provided by a major grant from the National Endowment for the Arts.
Additional funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting through NPR's Satellite Program Development Fund and from public radio stations.
And now this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumbs.
For a free picture of Bob and Ray, send a stamped self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000 GPO, New York 10116. Again, send a stamped self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000 GPO, New York 10116. We regret that we cannot send a picture without a stamped self-addressed envelope. This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.